Hey guys, this is Thomas over here at Nurse Money Talk, and in this video, what I want to do is really just talk about how to pass the NCLEX. So my hope is to give you some actionable tips you can use to take the NCLEX and to pass it the very first time. Before I get to that though, I want to go ahead and invite you to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. On this channel, I'll talk about all things related to nursing student and just overall nurse life. And also, if you find this video helpful, I would really appreciate hitting that thumbs up because that does help me in terms of making sure more people can find this video. Let's go ahead and get started right away with the very first tip that I have, and that is making sure that you get a good NCLEX prep course. The prep course I normally recommend, you can get to that by going to nursemoneytalk.com/NCLEX prep. But there is a reason why that I do recommend you get an NCLEX prep course, and ideally a good NCLEX prep course. The main thing is that an NCLEX prep course, it's going to really help you in terms of a lot of these tips that I'm going to give you. But overall, it's just going to help you be more successful when you're taking the NCLEX. So, I think they can help you in terms of forming a good game plan. They can help you in terms of making sure that you get a lot of practice questions, well-written and good practice questions at your disposal, but not just good practice questions, but questions that have good rationales, because of course the rationales are where a lot of your learning is going to come from. They'll also provide typically like with a test bank or kind of like an NCLEX simulation if you just want to, just kind of simulate like an actual NCLEX exam in your home. Overall, like an NCLEX prep will help you be more successful, right? And part of that is that, some of you might try to use, might say, well, I already have like my notes and all this other stuff that I took from, that I have from nursing school. I'm just going to use that to study. And you could do that. The issue though is that if you count all your notes and everything else you got from nursing school, some of y'all are gonna have like notes that are gonna be this thick. And it's really hard to sit and try to study for the NCLEX with your notes from nursing school, because a lot of those, because those notes you took from nursing school, they were probably geared towards passing the exams you took in nursing school, not necessarily the NCLEX. And to me, there is a difference between the two. I do have some videos already that I made about NCLEX prep courses. So for instance, whether or not you should get a self-paced NCLEX prep course versus like one that's more like instructor led. I'll go ahead and put the link to that video up there. But overall, if you just want to just get an NCLEX prep course and just the one that, like a good one, you can just go to nursemoneytalk.com/NCLEX prep to be able to check out the one that I recommend. So my next one is to develop a good study plan and stick with it. And so what I mean by that is just pretty much just getting organized. So for example, if you know that you want to take the NCLEX in 4 weeks, right? So you might decide that you're going to do 100 questions, at 6 out of 7 days a week, and then you'll then review the rationales for all those questions. So if you decide for example, that is the study plan you're going to use, it's just then trying to then stick to that plan. So on top of that, you might say, well, I'm going to study from 8 a.m. to like 1 p.m. or 8 a.m. to like 12 p.m. every single day for however many weeks. Whatever your plan is that works with you, or if you're a non-traditional student and you have like, potentially like maybe like a spouse and kids or something of that nature, or a full-time job, then whatever plan that you come up with, and you should come up with one that works for your schedule, just do everything you can to try to stick with it and to get organized that way. So my next point is to make sure that you're paying attention during nursing school. Now I know if you're at the tail end of nursing school, this might not apply to you as much as if you were at the very tail beginning. But the overall point of this is that It's really hard to try to study for the NCLEX if you've been goofing off um, throughout most of nursing school. And what I mean by that is like you haven't been organized and you've been doing a lot of like kind of like cramming and then brain dumping right after exams. So overall, like what you want to do is just like to make sure that you're taking nursing school seriously. Make sure that you're actually trying to learn the material as the school progresses so that when you come to the tail end of when you're actually studying for the NCLEX, things will be so much easier for you than otherwise then it'll be so much easier for you than it otherwise would. Now, if you are on the other side of that and you have been doing a lot of you know cramming and then brain dumping at after exams, it's not, I'm not necessarily saying that it's too late for you or that you won't be successful. It just might be a little bit more challenging, and so you will definitely need to make sure that you're paying attention to some of these other tips that I'm giving. My next tip is to make sure that you do a lot of practice questions. And so I've made a couple of videos already on like how I was successful on the NCLEX RN, which I'll put up here as well if you want to check that out. And then I also made another video on how I was successful on the NCLEX PN, so the licensure exam for the to become an LPN. I'll also put that video up here as well if you want to check that out. But the point of all of that is that at the heart of my success on taking both of those exams were doing a lot of practice questions, like hundreds and hundreds of practice questions. And then it's not just doing the practice questions and then just moving on to the next one. It's like doing the practice questions and then focusing and making sure that I understand the rationale on why the correct answer is the correct answer. And that's typically what I would do for those questions, is because like I don't think it's as helpful if you just do tests. Okay, I got this one right, and then move on. Even if it's one where like you're pretty certain you know what it is, I would go ahead and go through and read the rationale. Make sure that you have like a really deep understanding of why that answer is the correct answer. That way, because obviously that's not the exact same question you're gonna get on the NCLEX. So you might get a similar topic on it, but it's not going to be the exact same question. So the reason why you want to make sure that you're focusing on the rationales is that if those questions are asked multiple different ways, you'll still be able to come to the correct answer because you actually have a deep understanding of why the correct answer is what it is. My next tip is to make sure that you are comfortable with the NCLEX test format. So for instance, you shouldn't be surprised by the topics that are going to be covered on the NCLEX, and you shouldn't be surprised by the individual test formats. All of that, you should be familiar with it. Why? Because you've done your research, you've gotten the good NCLEX prep, you've gotten a good NCLEX prep course, you've done a ton of practice questions. So all of that shouldn't really come as a surprise to you. And to me, I think that's part of the way you can better prepare for the NCLEX prep. If you know what test format or test topics that you'll struggle in, then you should be able to know that, okay, I need to tailor my studying towards those deficits, like towards the parts of the exam that I'm going to struggle in. My next tip is to make sure that you identify your study style and then you stick with it. So another way to look at it is make sure you know for sure what made you successful in nursing school. What was, if you want to say, maybe like your secret sauce. And then, to me, like studying for the NCLEX is probably not the best time to really try to experiment. Unless for whatever reason, like you like you just happen to luck out through nursing school, which I would imagine that's probably not the case, at least for like the vast majority of you, then you probably had a certain, like I said, for lack of a better way, like a certain secret sauce that you had that worked for you, but might not necessarily work for another nursing student. And so for instance, like, were you the type of student that studied really well in groups, or were you the type of student that studied really well individually? So if you studied well in groups, then maybe try to hopefully see if you can connect with other students or other one of your peers that you just graduated nursing school with who are studying for the NCLEX or hopefully on like a similar timeline. Or better yet, if it's the same study group that you've been studying with throughout nursing school, maybe reach out to them or a couple of them, and then try to connect with them and maybe try to like sync up on like study goals. And I think that way you'll have like other students with you who are going through the exact same thing that you're going through. Another thing to kind of think about on this is, are you an auditory, visual, or kinesthetic learner? Like where did you tend to fall into in terms of your learning style? So if you were an auditory, then lean on that. Don't try to all of a sudden become a visual or kinesthetic learner if auditory was what got you through nursing school. Another thing to look at maybe is that, like, was part of your success during nursing school, was it reliant on working with tutors? Some students might look at this and might maybe, I don't know, maybe like feel a little ashamed. I don't know, like that they have to rely on tutors. To me, there's nothing to be ashamed about. If tutors, or if having a tutor was what made you successful throughout nursing school, then try to lean on that. So try whatever tutor you've been using. Try to reconnect with that tutor. If they don't necessarily work, if they don't necessarily focus on the NCLEX, you can go find one by a tutor that focuses on the NCLEX by going to NurseMoneyTalk.com/tutor. Link is on the screen. You'll also see it in the description below. And then try to find a tutor that will then help you navigate this last part of nursing school, or I should say maybe your last part of your nursing school journey. The next tip that I have is to make sure that you focus on passing the NCLEX and nothing else. And what I mean by this is that I'll see, like students, or I'll hear students who are just like, for whatever reason, like they're focused on passing with the minimum number of questions. Now, I already made a video on this, which I'll put up in a link, in the link above. But just to touch on this just a little briefly, it's like, I think that's the wrong focus. So what I mean by that is that your focus should be on passing the NCLEX. However you get to that, to passing the NCLEX, it's just irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So whether or not, that takes you the minimum number of questions, whether it takes you the maximum number of questions, whether it takes you the maximum number of allowable time on the NCLEX to actually pass it, it doesn't matter. Because what I think is that you can get so focused on, for example, oh, I need to pass with the minimum number of questions. And then what do you do once the minimum number of question goes past? So now you're at, 70, 76, 77, 78, and you're still kind of fixated on that minimum number of questions. It doesn't really matter, right? So nobody, like in my career, I've never looked at somebody and was like, oh, did you pass with the minimum number of questions? It doesn't matter. And honestly, if somebody asks you if you're that concerned about it, you could lie about it and nobody would know. And honestly, nobody would care. So your focus should be on I need to pass the NCLEX, and however I get to that point, in terms of number of questions or the time, hey, it doesn't really matter. I just need to pass. My next tip is to make sure that you don't wait too long to take the NCLEX. Now, once again, this is another point that I've already made a video on, and I'll link that above. But just to touch on this briefly, is that I think that there is such a thing as waiting too long to take the NCLEX. I think that I'll see, some students who are like, oh, well, I need to wait 2 months or 2 months plus to take the NCLEX or something like that. And to me, that's just way too long. I think you should probably try to take it as close to after you graduate as reasonably possible. And, of course, like, while obviously giving yourself enough time to study and whatnot. And the main thing is that, to a lesser extent, you'll start kind of forgetting things, if you will. But to me, the main issue is that you'll start losing momentum. And so, like, to me, like, momentum is as far as I'm concerned, it's a legit thing. Like, so you just graduated nursing school. Like, I think you probably would be better served, like, you don't even press on the brakes. Like, you just keep rolling through it. Try to maybe take the NCLEX on, like, I don't know, 4 to 5 weeks out or something. So, obviously it's going to vary based on what's going on with you. I did touch on that a little bit more on what my recommendations are on kind of like what timeline you should probably follow in that video above. So definitely check that out. Next tip is to try to stay positive. To me, this is actually like a big one that it's easier said than done, but I think it can make a world of difference, right? So whether or not you need to meditate, if you're a religious person, like prayer, whatever the case may be, positive self-talk, nurse affirmations, which, I wrote an article on nurse affirmations. I'll put that in the descriptions below, but trying to stay in the right mindset is a big deal, because the wrong mindset might mean that in your head, you've already failed before actually getting into the NCLEX. And that is not the right mindset you want to be in. Honestly, if this also means you need to stop talking to naysayers or negative Nancy's or whatever term you want to use them, maybe like, put them on the back burner for a little bit until after you take the NCLEX. And you know who I'm talking about. This could be like family members. It could even be like friends or, nursing school friends that you went through, but these are just individuals that are just super negative. They're just not encouraging. And that is not what you need. You need encouragement in your life at the moment. You need positive influences, because to me, that's going to be positive in terms of keeping you at the right mindset to help you power through the last stretch of your journey. My last and final tip is to make sure you go into the test on a high note. Make sure you go into the test the right way. Now, I already talked about making sure you stay positive. That was the previous tip. This one, it's a little bit different. You might even look at this how you literally come into the exam. So part of this is to make sure that you've been eating well. So this one is probably one that I feel like kind of gets thrown out there a little bit about eating healthy and whatnot. And like, people don't really tend to elaborate on this too much. But what I mean by eating well, because I am going to elaborate a little bit more, is that, so if you know that there are foods, like these could be foods that you really enjoy eating, but they just don't make you feel well, don't eat it. Don't eat it for a couple days leading into the exam. You can splurge on it after the exam, but just don't eat it. This could be things where like maybe it causes you bloating, acid reflux. Like it could be, I don't know, things where like maybe it gives you a lot of gas or something of that nature. Then don't eat those things. Try to eat healthy, eat better going into the exams, because I think that will set you up better for success. Make sure that you get a good sleep. Make sure you get good sleep, not just the night before the exam, but I would focus on getting good sleep a couple days leading into the exam. Make sure you walk into that exam rejuvenated. Make sure you know the rules of the testing site. As of the time of this recording, Pearson VUE is typically the one that administers the exam. That may or may not be the case in the future, whatever, I don't know, or whenever you watch this video. That's why I'm just saying in general, make sure you know the rules of the exam site. What can you do and not do? What can you wear or not wear? What can you have with you and not have with you? Those are important. Make sure you know what all of that is going into the exam, because there's some very odd rules that or unusual rules that most of you might not be too familiar with if you haven't taken an exam like this before. Now, moving on, make sure on top of this, make sure you know where is the testing site at? Where is it actually located? I would probably recommend that you go literally drive and go to that test site before you actually, or before your test date. That way you know where it's at, you know what building it's at. Like I remember when I took my exam, like it was in a random building, in a random office building, was in a random part of town, an area like I've never really been at. And it was in some random floor or corner in that random building. And so these are the type of things where like, it's if you know where it's at, it's not a big deal. But honestly, if you are going that morning before, especially if you, for whatever reason, you start running late and you're rushing, it's just one of those things that are just going to put you already like in a bad kind of like state or mind, with anxiety feel going into the exam. You want to decrease your anxiety. You want to keep a calm, if you want to say like calm demeanor, calm attitude going into the exam. And so that's why the next one is to make sure that you get there on time so you're not rushing. Especially if you happen to be taking this exam when you are most likely to, if you are most likely to run into rush hour traffic. You want to make sure that you're not rushing. You definitely want to make sure you're not late. These are all the tips and whatnot that I think can really help set you up to be more successful in the NCLEX. If you have any questions on any of those tips, let me know in the comment sections below. If you feel like there's a tip in there or something you've heard that was missed that you think other students would find beneficial, definitely put that in the comment sections below. The next thing I would mention is that, after taking the NCLEX, I would encourage you to come back to the channel and watch some of these other videos that I have on what you can do or should be doing after taking the NCLEX. This would include things such as like the NCLEX, trick. Did you pass? Did you not pass? Did you get the good pop-up? There's a video of that. I'll link that above. Of course, you can just search for it and then just put Nurse Money Talk after it in the search bar. You can, then look at, what do you do, if you pass the NCLEX, if you didn't pass the NCLEX. So definitely, I encourage you to come back to the channel and check out some of those videos, or you can just go to NurseMoneyTalk.com to check it out if you'd rather read instead of watching the video. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. if you've made it this far, I would really appreciate as well the thumbs up on this video. Once again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment sections below, and I will catch you very soon in that next video.